whenever the term botany comes into our mind, we always start thinking about the plant. So these are the things basically we are going to study. If we classify the plants into two parts, the plants is basically the plants can be divided into two major parts. One is overground part, that is stem, and another one is underground part, that is root. So this is a okay. So these are the simple picture we want to express how the plants are being. So root remains under the soil, and this is the geotrophic part, which tends to avoid the light and remain in the dark part. And stem always move towards the plant, move towards the light. Okay. So this is the simple structure of how a plant is grown. This is not the basic. This is a very basic structure. Not all plants follow this pattern, but if we want to draw some plant, we always draw something like that. Just if we go through that, we will see that usually flowers remains in the top part with the apical bud, and the parts from where the parts of the plant body from where leaves, stem, or flower arises. This part is called node. This part is called node, and whenever there is the distance between two nodes is called internode. Usually the buds appear in the top or in the side. If the buds appear in the side, they are called lateral bud or axillary bud. And if the buds appear in the top or apex of the plant, this is called apical bud. So anyway, we will see it later on with the course of time. So just if you go through this, you can see that there is distinct internode and node and internode in above ground part or in the shoot or stem. But if you go to the root, you will see only main root and secondary root or branches of root. Well, let's see. That is the part. If we sow a seed, the seed will arises a part at first which is called radical. This is the first root of a plant, which tends to go downwards or that side or down the ground. Then it arises, and then the stem appears. From the radical, the root develops, and the part which leads to the stem is called plumule. Okay, so just for your information, usually plants have the similar part of root underground as much as they have on the above ground. So the root and stem, they are almost similar in height. Almost. Don't take it, it is always, but they are quite similar. It's a big part. And that's why we always used to call it, the root is the hidden half of a plant. And for the first class, we are going to study that hidden part of the plant. This is the underground part, which grows positive geotrophic or negative phototropic. Geotrophic means movement towards or affinity towards a dark part. Affinity towards dark. Okay. So, and phototropic means affinity towards light. Root usually, most of the time, show affinity towards light. Root সাধারণত অন্ধকারের দিকে থাকতে পছন্দ। That's why it always go downward the soil and tend to remain in dark. They cannot be differentiated into nodes and internodes, as we have seen. But this is one of the major differential feature of root and stem. In stem, you can divide into node and internode, but in root, it cannot be divided into nodes and internodes. If you can divide it into nodes and internodes, it has to be stem. Leaves and buds are absent in roots. We already come to know that leaves and buds and other stem branches arises from node. So if there is no node and internode, there should not be any leaves or buds. Usually, the leaves and the roots are generally non-chlorophylls and non-green in color. They usually do not carry any chlorophyll in themselves, and they do not have any green color. They are usually pale whitish in color. And the apex of the root is usually protected by a special structure called a root cap. It is just like the helmet we used to wear before the motorcycling or driving vehicles. This is the protective feature which protects the tender growing part of the root. And the root hair presents, that sometimes create confusion. People think that root hair is the branch, like branch. They are not the branch. They are the extension of epidermis. This is the when the outer layer, the outermost layer of the root is called epiblema or epidermis, and outermost layer is called epidermis. When the cells of any cell or some cells of the outermost layer got extended towards the outside, that forms the root hair. একদম বাইরের লেয়ার থেকে একটা সেল থেকে সরাসরি বের হয়ে আসবে, একটা বা একাধিক সেল থেকে সেলটাই পুরোপুরি লম্বা হবে। হ্যাঁ, so this is the part of the plant. This is the intricate part of a cell. So in root hair is always unicellular and the extension of one epidermis cell. One root hair always arises from one epidermis cell. So let's see, in this slide we have a slide description of the root. We try to describe this the squared part of the root. The first A picture showed the root of a maize, and this is the anatomical feature. These root hairs are they are not that, they are normal, but I just want to show you the cap of the root. This part is the cap. It is always growing, dividing meristemic. It forms with always dividing meristemic cell, and they always keeps growing. And this part protects the immature growing part of the root so that they can tend to grow. And later on, the later part, which becomes mature, they develops the root hair or extension of root. So how they are, let's describe the types of root. Basically, there are two types of root. One is taproot system and another one is adventitious root system. In the earlier I mentioned you about the radical. So radical is the part of the root which is formed during germination. The first root is called radical. If the radical remains intact and if the radical is not damaged and it tends to grow properly, the root that is formed from the radical is called taproot or taproot system, and the whole system is called taproot system. If somehow radical is damaged or root arises from any part of the plant other than radical, that is called adventitious root, and the whole system is called adventitious root system. So be sure, when the root develops from the radical, it is taproot, and taproot, the whole system is called taproot system. And if root from any part other than radical, the radical is damaged or somehow the radical didn't grow, they form root from other part of the plant, this is called adventitious root system. Okay. So let's have some description about the taproot. Taproot develops from the radical and it's very normal root, and this is the most common type of root system in dicotyledonous plant. The primary root, radical, it grows into strong main root, and that is called taproot. And taproot continues with the main stem. So this is the intersection of the root and stem. When the taproot finishes, the top of the taproot is the bottom of the stem. So it is the extension of stem towards the ground. Taproot usually grows vertical to the soil and produces branches sideward. So the side branching are called lateral branching. The main root is called taproot. Main root is called primary root, and the branches which develops from the primary root is called secondary root. And when another branch develops from the secondary root, that is called tertiary root. So they are the root, not root hair. Okay, so root hair develops from maybe primary root or secondary root or tertiary root. That is when the epidermis or the outermost layer of the root extended, one cell extends somewhere, this part is called root hair. Okay, so let's go to the adventitious root system. As we have mentioned, root grows from any part other than radical. This is adventitious root. Adventitious root is very common and most common type of root system in monocotyledonous plant. I think you know all of you know difference between monocotyledonous plant and dicotyledonous plant. Okay, if you have any difficulties, don't forget to raise your hand. Sometimes the Okay, we still have some people coming right now. Okay. So when the radical is got short-lived or it got damaged or somehow root arises from other part of the radical, this is called adventitious root system. Usually in monocotyledonous, it is found in monocotyledonous plant. In monocotyledonous plant, when a bunch of adventitious root arises from the bottom of the base of the stem, they form like a shape like a bush or a bushy shape of bush of root, fiber. So they are same in the length, they're similar in the length, they're similar in the girth, and the whole root system is same in shape. It is not extended or slender in any part. So when this bunch of fiber develops together, this is also called fibrous root system as well. But be sure, fibrous root system is a part of adventitious root system when it arises from the bottom of the stem. But if the roots arises from other than the zone of radical, such as from if it arises from node or some other parts, it is definitely adventitious root system. But if that adventitious root system develops instead of taproot and in the same zone, just like a bunch of fibers, this is fibrous root system as well. So anyway, this root looks like fiber and named as fibrous root system. So this is the picture. You can see that with taproot system and fibrous root system for your convenience. Later on. Now we are going to describe. So we have come to know about the taproot and fibrous root. Taproot always develops from dicotyledonous plant, and fibrous root develops usually from fibrous root develops from monocotyledonous plant. So sometimes the roots get modified. They are not always the same structure like this. They got modified into some specialized structure for the purpose of food storage, for the purpose of reproduction, or some other purpose as well. Sometimes they can even help in photosynthesis as well. They can absorb root, moisture from air, and they can absorb moisture from different parts and nutrients and different parts. But basically, sometimes they got modified. So let's have some modifications of taproot system. If the taproot is modified, the major three modification forms are fusiform, napiform, and conical. Fusiform is swollen in the middle part of the root, but both the tips, the upper part and lower part, becomes tapering slender. Napiform, the root extended like a ball. The upper part of the root becomes spherical, just like a ball, and they sharply tends towards the bottom part. This is napiform. And conical is something like the structure of a cone. The upper part is wide, broad, and it becomes narrow in the bottom part. That is no conical system. So these are the description of picture of three most important modifications. They are basically modified for storage of food. So the picture A, this is napiform root. It is slender in the broader in the top, becomes spherical, and becomes sharply tender in the bottom ground. Picture B is conical root, which is wider or broader in the apical and becomes slender gradually. And picture C is the fusiform root, which is slender in both in the top and bottom and become broader in the middle part. So আমরা এখানে তিন রকমের রুট দেখতে পাচ্ছি মূলত এখানে এটা হচ্ছে ফর দ্য পারপাস অফ ফুড স্টোরেজ, এটা স্টোরেজ পারপাসে হয়ে থাকে। পিকচার এ হচ্ছে ন্যাপিফর্ম রুট, পিকচার এ হচ্ছে ন্যাপিফর্ম রুট, যেটা হচ্ছে শুরুর দিকে ফুলে উঠে এক্সপ্যান্ড হয়ে উঠে তারপর খুব গ্র্যাজুয়ালি টেন্ড করে স্লেন্ডার হয়ে যায়, জাস্ট চোখা হয়ে যায়। পিকচার বি হচ্ছে কনিক্যাল রুট, এটা একটা তোমার হচ্ছে কোন শেপ, জাস্ট কোন শেপ, উপরের দিকটা সবসময় টপ পার্টটা অলওয়েজ ব্রডার ওয়াইডার থাকবে, দেন বিকাম স্লেন্ডার গ্র্যাজুয়ালি। অ্যান্ড দ্য পিকচার সি ইজ ফিউজিফর্ম রুট, which is যেটা উপর দিকে এবং নিচের দিকে চাপা থাকবে, তো মাঝখানটা ফুলে থাকবে কিছুটা, কিন্তু এটার মধ্যে একটা রেশিও থাকবে, তিনটায় মোটামুটি একটা রিলেটিভ থাকবে। Now let's go to the modification of adventitious root system. The adventitious root system is modified into different parts, but first of all, we'll see the fasciculated, moniliform, and tuberous. Fasciculated root, when a group of fibrous root or adventitious root becomes swollen for the storage of food or some reason at the base of the stem, it is called fasciculated. And when they are in the thread-like structure, but the thread have some bead-shaped structure, just like a string of pearls. This is called moniliform, and there is no definite shape and structure. This is called tuberous form. So these are the pictures of fasciculated, moniliform, and tuberous root. Picture A is fasciculated. Picture B is moniliform, and picture C is tuberous root. These three modifications are basically due to the storage of food. Now, let's see some specialized modifications as well. There are lots and lots of modifications. We are not going to touch all of them, but we are going to have a glimpse of some most important stuffs. So first of all, the epiphytic root. Epiphytic root is basically seen in orchids, such as they can absorb, they can got stuck to some plant with the climbing root, and they have some specialized green color roots which can absorb moisture from the air and sometimes helps in photosynthesis as well. It is most common in orchids. Second one is nodal root. When the roots are developed from the node of a stem, it is called nodal root system. It is very common in maize. So in this picture, you can see a group of fibrous root in the bottom, but if you see just the node above the ground, above the bottom part, it also bears a bunch of roots. These are the nodal roots, which arises from the nodes. And the proper stilt root, which develops from a plants or bunch of trunk or a lower branch of the plant to support the plant so that they can stay erected on the ground. And this one is a bit tricky. It will be better if we can show you, but hopefully we will be able to show you in the 4th year if you go to Sundarban or somewhere. This is respiratory roots. When the root, usually the plant take the gas, plant does the gaseous exchange. Plant takes the carbon dioxide and release the oxygen through takes the oxygen through the leaf parts. But these types of fruit, when the soil is swamp or marshy, the land is covered with water. So plant roots cannot have enough oxygen in the ground to have respiratory purpose. That's why root has some specialized structure which comes out of the ground, and the tip of the root, this structure remains in the air so that they can take gas, oxygen, and do the respiratory purpose straight from the air. These types of roots are called respiratory roots, and this type of specialized root is called new metaphor, which is very common in Sundarban and that part of mangrove tidal forest. সুন্দরবনের যে এটা হচ্ছে, এটা মূলত হয়েছে সুন্দরবন বা এরকম ম্যানগ্রোভ ফরেস্ট, এটা হয়ে থাকে স্পেশালাইজ। রুটটা মাটির নিচে থাকে, বাট রুটের একটা পার্ট মাটির নিচে কিন্তু সবসময় পানি থাকে, ওখানে অক্সিজেন পেতে পারে না। অক্সিজেন না পেলে তারা রেসপিরেশন করতে পারে না। রেসপিরেশন না করলে গাছগুলো মারা যাবে। সেই জন্য তারা রেসপিরেশন কন্টিনিউ করার জন্য, অক্সিজেন নেওয়ার জন্য রুটেরই একটা পার্ট জাস্ট মাটির উপরে উঠে আসে এবং টিপটা বাইরে থাকে। এই টিপটার দ্বারা রুটের যে টিপটা, এপিক্যাল পার্টটা, এখানে একটা খুব সফট কিছু পোর্ট থাকে যেটা খালি চোখে দেখা যায় না। এই পোর্ট দিয়ে বাতাস থেকে তারা অক্সিজেন নেয়, নিয়ে রুটের ভিতরে ডেলিভারি করে। দিস টাইপ অফ root is called pneumatophore or respiratory roots. So that's all about roots and modifications of root. We already had described this on the first class, but I just going to give you this glimpse. This is the glimpse. So we finished the root, and let's go to the stem. Stem is the above ground part of the plant which provides support for leaf and buds, and it bears fruit and flower. Stem always have nodes, and which from nodes the leaves, buds, and other stems arises, and from the buds it can lead to flower, fruit, or another branch. And the distance between two nodes is called internode. So these are the characteristics of stem. I'm not going to describe because you can see it. Above ground, have node, internode, leaf, supply nutrients, or some nutrients supplied to other, store nutrients. So this is a very simple picture. You can see the apical bud which arises in the top of the leaf. Apical bud সবসময় একদম উপরে থাকবে, apex of the leaf. When it is in the side of the plant, it is called axillary or lateral. So a bird gula, these birds will always be only in stem. If these birds is present, it cannot be root. It has to be stem. And when the part of the planটের যেই জায়গা থেকে বার্ডগুলো ডেভেলপ করবে সেই জায়গাটাকে বলা হয়ে থাকে নোড, এবং দুইটা নোডের মাঝখানে জায়গাকে বলা হয়ে থাকে ইন্টারনোড. So the zone of plant from where this leaf or axillary buds or branches or stems arises, this zone is called node. And the distance between two nodes, the space between two nodes is called internode. And keep in mind that bird, if there is a bird, if there is an axillary bud, it always have a leaf under it. So axillary bud always develops in the corner between the main stem and the leaf. Bud in the middle part, stem in upper part, and leaf just ground to the axillary bud. Okay. So sometimes you cannot see the leaf. Sometimes you cannot see the leaf all the time because the leaf can got shaded or leaf can be lost or leaf can be damaged. But it will always leave a scar or a spot. And this thing is called leaf scar. সবসময় খেয়াল রাখবে স্টেম যদি হয়ে থাকে স্টেমের সবসময় বার্ড থাকবে এবং বার্ড সবসময় লিফের উপরে এক্সাইল, এই অ্যাঙ্গেলটাকে দিস অ্যাঙ্গেল ইজ কল্ড এক্সাইল. স্টেম এবং লিফের মাঝখানে যে অ্যাঙ্গেলটা থাকবে বার্ড the bird is always developed from in that angle, and this angle is called exile. এই বার্ডটা যখন থাকবে তখন বি শিওর যে বার্ডের নিচে অবশ্যই একটা লিফ ছিল. যদি কোনো লিফ থেকে থাকে ইটস ভেরি গুড, যদি কোনো লিফ না থেকে থাকে ইফ ইউ অবজার্ভ ইট প্রপারলি তোমরা দেখবা লিফ ছিল, লিফটা পড়ে গিয়েছে, ক্ষত চিহ্নটা রয়ে গিয়েছে. দিস ইজ কল্ড লিফ স্কার. এই স্কারটা অবশ্যই থাকবে. যদি বার্ড থাকে সেখানে দেয়ার হ্যাজ টু বি লিফ, দেয়ার হ্যাজ টু বি স্টেম, অ্যান্ড দিস অ্যাঙ্গেল ইজ কল্ড the angle between stem and leaf is called exile. Bird will always develop in the exile of a leaf. Leafের upper angle সবসময় জন্মাবে, লিফের নিচে না, সবসময় লিফের উপরে থাকবে. Okay, so let's go to the next part. The modifications of stem. Stem can be modified in the air, can be modified in the surface of the soil, and sometimes it's go below the ground. That's why they are the modifications. Below ground stem are mostly modified stem most of the time. And aerial stems, they are sometimes modified, sometimes not. Subaerial stem, they are modified as well. So let's start with the underground stem modifications. Stem modification basically there are three basic reasons for stem modification. One is for food storage. Second one is for protection, and third one for reproduction. So these are the three basic reasons for stem modifications or root modification, whatever it is. First of all, storage of food. Second of all, protection from enemies. Third of all, reproduction. So let's start with the underground stem modifications. Underground stem are modified into different, there are lots of modifications, but we will start with the four major modifications of underground stem. So they are, first one is rhizome. Rhizome is the modifications of stem which remains underground for the purpose of storage of food. Basically, rhizome always grow horizontally. If it grows horizontally, it is most of the time it's rhizome. It remains under the ground and it bears nodes and internodes. It bears leaf, but this leaf is specially modified, and that leaf is called scale leaf. যখন মাটির নিচে যে রাইজোমটা যে হবে সেটা যখন হচ্ছে কি হরাইজন্টালি গ্রোথ করতে থাকবে মাটির সারফেসের সঙ্গে হরাইজন্টাল হয়ে, তখন সেটাকে বলবো রাইজোম. রাইজোমের মধ্যে সবসময় নোড ইন্টারনোড ডেফিনেটলি আছে এবং লিফও আছে. স্পেশালি এই লিফটা খালি চোখে বোঝাটা খুব কঠিন, আমরা যদি ধরি তাহলে হয়তো বুঝতে পারবো. এই লিফটাকে দিস মডিফাইড লিফ ইজ কল্ড স্কেল লিফ. Well, I'm not going to give you the example of rhizome. We will find it later on. Corm. So আমরা বলেছিলাম first extension modification হচ্ছে যে stem is extended in the horizontally to the ground. But if it is not horizontal, it becomes vertical to the ground. It is called corm. This is definitely another reason for storage of food. They stored the food and they become extended towards the vertical to the ground. But definitely when you are storing the food in the vertical, you have some expansion towards the horizontal as well. But main extension is vertical. That is called corm. I'm not giving you the example right now, but you have to find it out. Rhizome is very, very common type of underground modified stem. So we have got rhizome, corm. Now let's have tuber. Tuber is the solen tip of underground branch. যখন ব্রাঞ্চটা মাটির নিচে ঢুকে যেমন টিপটা ফুলে উঠে, when the stem goes underground and the tip of the stem becomes swollen by storing some food, this is called tuber. Tuber do not have any definite shape, but usually they become roundish in shape. But most of the time they are irregular, and they always store some food in form of starch. And the last one is bulb. At first we had rhizome, which grows horizontally to the ground. Then we have corm, which grows vertical to the ground. Then we have corm, which has no definite shape or definite direction. It can go horizontal or vertical, whatever it is. It can be irregular. It is very irregular, but it has to be the tip of the leaf. These three are the rhizome, corm, and tuber. And the last one is bulb. When the stem is reduced and represented by a short disc, the stem do not grow properly. That is called bulb. So horizontal growing rhizome, vertical growing corm, irregular growth, that is tuber, and without any proper growth, that is disc. So this can without any proper growth, that is bulb. The very common example of bulb is garlic or onion. So let's see this type of pictures. These are the picture of some different types of growth. So the ginger is the very common example of rhizome. Potato is the very common example of tuber. Different types of colocasia are these are the these are the example of corm, and definitely bulb are represented by the onion or garlic. Now let's well, is it? Are we in time or we have crossed the time? Shall we continue or shall we pause right now?
Please continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we have just a bit on continuation. So we had the underground modification of stem. Now let's come to the ground. That is not in the air, but remains in the ground. They are of 4 types as well. Runner, offset, stolon, and sucker. When the stem moves in a straight line, and each node the stem produces, it remains in the soil surface, moves towards a single direction, and always produce root and leaf in every node. This is called runner. A single straight line developing growth, which all in each node each produces root and leaf. And if the stem of a runner become short, and it produces branches in every direction, not in single line, in every direction, from right side, from left side, from north, east, west, it goes in every direction, it becomes offset. So difference between runner and offset is that runner will grow mainly in one direction, and it will develop a leaf and root in every node. But if it doesn't grow in a single direction, but instead of single direction, it grows in every direction from the main plant, and a short, thick stem, this is called offset. And third one is stolon. Stolon is basically grown towards the outside, and it grows towards a bit distance, and the end of the tip of the stem arises from the ground with a root and leaves, and ultimately becomes a new plant. That is called stolon. And sucker is something like stolon, but the difference is sucker is that sucker goes through the ground and arises the tip just like a different plant from a bit distance. But if you check the ground, you will find that there is a connection between the new plant and the old plant. It will be easier if you see some pictures. So these pictures on the left side of the screen is runner. It grows in just a thread-like structure, one direction, and from each node it will have leaf and root. But in case of offset, though it has just one thing, but it can have 2 or 3 branches as well in different directions, and it can grow in any direction, on the east, west, north, south, in any direction, but it is parallel to the main plant. And if the plant stem goes down the ground a bit distance and arises, that is called sucker as well. So this will make it bit clear that the runner usually moves along the surface of the leaf, along the surface of the ground, and they will have root and stem in each nodes. But sucker tends to grow down the ground, below the surface of the ground, below the surface of the soil, and the tip arises just a bit distance, and it may have more nodes in the below ground part without any leaf. But the stolon, it develops from the top, but eventually it comes down to the ground, and the part of the node which touches the ground, they tends to develop some roots. So this is the difference between runner, sucker, and offset. And this runner is unidirectional, but if it becomes multidirectional, then this runner will be called offset. ঠিক আছে, যখন প্রত্যেকটা নোড থেকে রুট এবং লিফ হবে এবং এটা একটা ডিরেকশনে যাবে, দ্যাট ইজ কল্ড রানার। যখন এই রানারটার স্টেমটা থিক এবং শর্ট হবে এবং সব দিকে যেতে থাকবে, ডানে বামে সামনে পিছে সব দিকে যখন যাবে, দ্যাট ইজ কল্ড অফসেট। এবং রানারের মতন একটা মডিফাইড, যখন স্টেম পার্টটা গ্রাউন্ডের নিচ দিয়ে যাবে, যে জাস্ট টিপটা উইল অ্যারাইজ bit different, bit away from the main plant, that is called sucker. The part of the plant which this stem which remains underground, যে স্টেমের যে পার্টটা মাটির নিচে থাকবে, সেখানে কিন্তু রুট হতে পারবে। Stolon is similar to that, similar to sucker, but the difference between stolon and sucker is that sucker always move below the ground, and only the tip appears a bit distance, a bit away from the main plant. But stolon, it starts from the air, then it reaches the ground, and then it tends to develop a new plant. This type of modifications of subaerial stem basically for subaerial for reproduction. Now the last one is aerial stem modifications. They can be tendril, when the stem is modified into thread-like structure. They can be thorn, when the stem is modified into pointed, hard, thorn-shaped structure. It can be phylloclad, it can be cladoid, or it can be bulbil. I'm not going to describe it properly, just see the pictures, you will have some idea. This is the tendril. When the stem becomes thread-like structure, this is called tendril. When the stem becomes spiny and becomes thorn, it is called thorn. The phylloclad are something like extended stem, which basically appears in cactus. Cladoid is also appear in grounds, and these are the types of bulbil for the purpose of reproduction. So this is basically for stem and everything. So we come to finish our lecture of first class. So this is all about stem and root. So if you have any question, you can